Great. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. This is the Sunday afternoon Sutta study from Dhammadharini Monastery. And so today, like last week, today we're going to have a recorded video teaching offered by Ayya Marajina before she left for pilgrimage. So we'll introduce that a little more before when we start that. But for now, let's everyone kind of settle in and let's sit together for about 10 minutes before we get started, just to gather ourselves here and settle a little bit. So think about your sitting posture. Bring yourself to an upright and balanced and aligned posture. And it can be helpful to sort of like test really what feels balanced and what feels aligned, but like leaning a little too far forward and then a little too far back. And so you can kind of settle into something that feels comfortable and alert and also relaxed. And then bring your attention down into the body. Feel the contact between your body and the surface you're sitting on. Let yourself tune into the stability of that. And every time your attention rises up and wants to go off into thoughts, think about bringing it back down to something stable and stationary. And just keep bringing the attention back there. Just sit in silence for about 10 minutes. Welcome again, everyone. This is our Sutta study program from Dhammadharini Monastery. And I'm Tavira Bhikkhuni. So right now we have the pilgrimage going on in Nepal and India. So there's a large group, there's over 100 bhikkhunis and seminaries from 13 countries on pilgrimage together. They've started in Nepal and are now in India. And actually they're nearing the end of the pilgrimage portion of the trip. So there's just a small contingent left here at the monastery. And so what we have today is, before she left, Ayya Marajina, who's a close friend of our community who ordained here years ago, over a decade ago. She now lives in Florida, but she stayed with us for a few days before departing on the pilgrimage, and she recorded a Sutta study class for us to watch today. So we can watch that together, and then we can talk about it afterwards. And it's Samyutta Nikaya 21.10, and there's a link in the chat if you want to go take a look on Sutta Central. And this is the Theranāmakasutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. So I'm going to screen share this video and we can watch together.
Hello, I'm Ayya Marajina, and I'm going to turn up my volume. Welcome to our Sunday program at Dhammadharini Monastery. Today we're going to take a look at the Samyutta Nikaya 21.10, senior in name only, Theranāmakasutta. And you may recognize this sutta as similar to a couple of others. There's actually a few, maybe 4 others, similar in theme, called the Sutta. And in these suttas, the Buddha discusses solitude. And there's a great deal of confusion about solitude in our Dhamma practice and even in monastic life. So this is what we'll take a look at today. And I encourage you to listen, to be attentive. And if there are questions, I'll be available to answer them soon. This is a pre-recorded program. So let's begin. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So the confusion about being alone is, you may have experienced it. You go off on retreat, 10-day retreat, and even though you're in silence, you're in a room alone, you don't look at others, you keep your gaze downcast, you don't speak when you're eating, no chit-chatting, your phone has been turned off. And yet, what happens? It's this narrative, this storytelling up here in the electrical impulses of the of our brain, they keep going. It's like when you're in a car and the driver takes their foot off the accelerator, but the car keeps coasting. Unless it's a golf cart, but we're not talking about golf carts. We're talking about cars on a highway going 45 miles per hour and take the foot off the accelerator, and it takes a while to stop. It keeps coasting. And our habitual patterns, our habitual patterns are like that. Even though we stop, the patterns keep going, they keep arising. And so when we talk about solitude, it's not just physical solitude, it's the stopping of the process of contact, feeling, perception, mental formations. And it does take some physical solitude to learn what that is like. You may notice that, like on a 10-day retreat, your mind starts to settle down like 3 or 4 days. I remember my son wanted to introduce me to a priest one time, and the priest was about to go on a retreat, a weekend retreat. This is a Catholic priest. And he said to me, "Oh, I can't wait. Solitude, no television, no phone, heavenly bliss." And I was just thinking to myself, it's not going to happen in 2 days, especially somebody that's so immersed in the phone and television. So let's start. Excuse me. Let's start with sharing my screen. There we are. In the Bhikkhu Vagga of the Samyutta Nikaya, 2110, senior in name only, Theranāmakasutta. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrels' feeding ground. Now at that time, there was a certain mendicant who was senior in name only. He lived alone and praised living alone. He entered the village for alms alone, returned alone, sat in private alone, and focused on walking mindfully alone. So from seeing this, it may appear that the monk is practicing solitude because this monk is alone. He's not socializing. He's not among crowds. He's not chit-chatting at the water hole. But the title of the sutta is Senior in Name Only. So a senior monk who one would imagine has had some practice, but in name only. So the monk has reached a level of years, but hasn't experienced, hasn't understood what it is to be alone, truly alone. Then several mendicants went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, "Sir, there's a certain mendicant who is a senior in name only. He lives alone and praises living alone." So the Buddha addressed one of the monks, "Please, monk, in my name, tell the mendicant senior that." The teacher summons him. "Yes, sir," that monk replied. He went to the venerable senior and said to him, "Reverend senior, the teacher summons you." "Yes, reverend," the monk replied. He went to the Buddha, bowed, and sat down to one side. The Buddha said to him, "Is it really true, senior, that you live alone and praise living alone?" "Yes, sir." "But in what way do you live alone and praise living alone?" "Well, sir, I enter the village for alms alone, I return alone, I sit in private alone, and focus on walking mindfully alone. That's how I live alone and praise living alone." And the confusion that I hear among practitioners is that this is solitude, mental solitude, viveka. And the distinction that it would be, I believe, helpful to understand is that it it should begin with this sort of solitude. This sort of physical solitude is very good. And we hear stories all the time of monks going out to the forest back in the Buddha's time and also in our time. And that empties the mind of certain contacts, like when you're in the forest or when you're on a retreat. You're not watching television, you're not listening to music, you're not engaging in conversations where you shouldn't be. You've dropped the phone, the computer, work, family, you go off. And that's the beginning of solitude. That's how one can understand how the mind keeps going, like the car that keeps coasting when the foot is taken off the accelerator. We want to stop. But the narratives, the stories, the sankhara keep arising. "That is a kind of living alone," the Buddha replied. "I don't deny it. But as to how living alone is fulfilled in detail, listen and apply your mind well, I'll speak." "Yes, sir," he replied. "And how, senior, is living alone fulfilled in detail? It's when what's in the past is given up and what's in the future is relinquished, and desire and greed for the present incarnations is eliminated." Because Sujato has a note on the side that desire for present incarnations is in plural, meaning desire for one's own body and the bodies of others. So here, when the past is given up, it's, all of our memories, good memories and bad memories, memories that we welcome. Once in a while, we're among friends or family and um, share memories and have a good time and um, have a good waste of time. And what's in the future is relinquished. Well, we don't know what the future brings. This is just the the planning and the thinking and the strategizing of what we're going to do and how we're going to be and who we're going to see, what material possessions we're going to work toward, or just, shopping online. Just these are all desires like based in the future. They don't have to be real either. They can be purely imagination. Desire and greed for present incarnations is eliminated. Desire and greed. And I often see these words translated as like sexual lust. And that's like easily understood here. Incarnation, carne is flesh. But it doesn't have to be physical lust. I mean, people get addicted to video games and just start thinking about what playing the video game, going over and over in one's mind about what scene or how to conquer next level or whatever. Or desire of one's own body is not physical lust. It can be adornment, purchasing jewelry, purchasing perfumes, cosmetics, the new colors of the season. Fashion, dietary supplements. I mean, this can like range. This is so much more than just physical lust. And I understand that there are some people that have this huge burden of lust, physical lust. But if you're not one of them, don't discount that you don't have this. It it comes up in so many ways. The mind is just so stealthy and clever to bring up all sorts of things that would be, doing them would be better. Like when you go off and retreat, second day comes around, third day comes around, and you're thinking this was a mistake. I can't calm this mind. I should have gone to somewhere else, done something else with my vacation. So this is what solitude is about. And I don't want to discount going off into retreat or into the forest. Some people need this so much more than others. Some people that are introverted can need this much more than extroverted personalities and need it over and over again. But with the momentum of calming the mind, there's different personalities, different sorts of monasteries, different retreat situations, different teachers, and we find our niche so that we can practice. And it's a very individual practice. It's not one size fits all. So I'm not discounting physical solitude, but it cannot become the reliance, like being isolated all the time. This is actually something built into the monastic life where we cannot be isolated all the time. We have to we rely on others for food, for shelter, for robes, for medicines. And what we have to give as a monastic in exchange for this is our experience and our practice, our Dhamma teachings that the Buddha gave us. experienced and practiced and realized. So it's when what's in the past is given up, what's in the future is relinquished, and desire and greed for present incarnations is eliminated. That's how living alone is fulfilled in detail. That is what the Buddha said. Then the Holy One, the teacher, went on to say, the champion, all-knower, so very intelligent, is unsullied in the midst of all things. He's given up all, freed in the end of craving. I declare that man to be one who lives alone, which is very similar to the Sutta. Let one not trace back the past or yearn for the future yet to come. That which is past is left behind. Unattained is the yet to come. But that which is present he discerns with insight. And this is where the Sutta sort of takes off from this base of solitude. Here, the Buddha's instruction is just giving up the past, giving up the future, and giving up desire and greed for the present incarnation, for the physical existence in the present. So this is a stepping stone for this monk who, was just relying on the word of being in solitary, being alone. But the physical aloneness doesn't get you to the insight. It's just a training ground for the real work. The real work, we're not training the body, we're training the mind. And being truly alone is being able to watch the sankhara, that chain, contact, feeling, perception, or sometimes contact, perception, feeling, and mental formation. This is the loop, the chain that mental solitude becomes aware of. And it's through that physical solitude first. We don't actually know what mental solitude is at first. It's something that we haven't experienced. Most of our lives have been among others, and telling ourselves this narrative, these stories. This is this, that's that. This happened. Why it's happened. This, rather than paying attention to the contact, the feeling, the perception, the mental formations, which happen like that. It's very, very quick. So when the mind is full of everything, of all this contact coming up, it doesn't notice. And not knowing that, where are we orienting ourselves to when we don't know how it is? It's like a jhana, you can read about it. I think it was Ayya said, it's like the taste of a mango. You can read about it. You can, have charts and easels and visually you can, compare it on a sweetness graph of, where it falls into, like maybe between a banana and a peach, or the texture of a mango. You can do all sorts of research and study of a mango. But what Ayya said is that until you take a bite of the mango, you don't know. You can even have like this chemical analysis of the taste of a mango, what happens in the brain when you consume a mango, or all the different varieties of mangoes. And did you know there's like male mangoes and female mangoes, mangas? It's true. Until you take that bite, until you experience a jhana, you don't actually know. You're working on conceptualizations, just concepts, just words, descriptions. That's not knowledge. True knowledge is wisdom, and it comes through experience. So before we get to mental solitude, we're just working with the instruction. That's all. And we have to actually push ourselves with discipline to get to the point where this is like the base, that we are always with sati, with clear awareness and comprehension of everything that's going around us. So the practice does begin with physical solitude. We need to remove ourselves from our customary environment, unless the customary environment is perfect, in which case, begs the question, why are you not awakened yet? Little by little, in this gradual progress and this gradual training, you will notice these gaps in the mind, where the mind is just resting. And it comes up with contact. You get to familiarize yourself with that contact. Something happens. You see eye contacts. Speaking for myself, eye contacts a cow in the field. Feeling sometimes joyful, sometimes painful, depending on the perception. Is it a healthy looking cow? Is it a cow that's crying out in the field? Is it a skinny cow? And the stories come up, the memories of when I had a dairy, niche dairy. And so if I don't know what mental solitude is, that story that begins in the mind because of contact can continue for a while. But with practice, gradually one catches that, and the mind returns to a settled quiet. And this is ideally found on the cushion, but we can't leave it on the cushion. We have to be able to take it out to situations that are very disturbing for us. In every situation, to be at a level where the mind isn't just constantly going and going and going, but the mind has become more settled so that we can assess the situation with some clarity and some understanding. And little by little, through this sort of practice, cushion practice, day-to-day life practice, we see how the mind settles and how good that feels. And we want more of that and less of the activity. So we have to keep this up. And it's not something that occurs, from 1 week to the next, or from the very first retreat we go to, or from the 10th retreat necessarily that we go to. It's something that progresses gradually with time and practice. We have to put effort into our practice. Excuse me. So what might happen is that suddenly the mind is settled, things are going well, and then it just goes off track again, and then our past begins, like, before I, got this jhana, and before I was able to just, meditate at the drop of a pin. I could, and before I did this, and now I can't do that anymore, and woe is me. If you keep at it, it'll come back. If you keep up a good practice interspersed with retreats, not constantly draining yourself, not constantly working for, a goal. The mind appreciates quiet, and that quiet also means detaching once in a while and getting back to the practice that the Buddha gave instruction for, which is, there are these roots of trees, these empty huts, but if you go to those roots and there's ants, well, that's another practice. You go to the empty hut and your mind won't shut up. Just keep at it, stay there, and it'll happen. And you have to take care of yourself. You have to eat properly. You have to get some exercise physically. You have to read the suttas. You have to listen to Dhammadesanas. You have to have sila. And it will happen. If you take care of your mind, the mind will take care of this existence. So you find a balance between physical and mental solitude, where you operate at your own frequency. You can take up the task at hand, and you can also let it go when you need to. This is something that takes time. It takes effort, personal effort, energy, desire, right? It takes desire. We have to want it because it can be difficult. So I think I didn't pay attention to the time. I hope this has been helpful for you. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you absolutely don't need physical solitude. We do, some more than others. but with diligence and discipline. We will need physical solitude less and less, unless that is just our nature. And that's okay too. So, I wish you well. I wish there's no suffering among any of you, any of us, anyone, anywhere, any being, in any state. And I wish for the suffering to cease entirely. It's enough already. It's enough. So I'll be thinking of you. If you have any questions, you can email. Unless you're on WhatsApp, then you can write me directly or on Facebook. I'll try to respond to your questions as soon as I'm able to when I'm not traveling. I do care about your practice, and I do care that my teaching is clear. And so I also appreciate physical solitude to keep mental solitude going. So let's dedicate our merit. To all the devas around us, wherever we are, to all the children everywhere, to their parents, their families, to all the animals, to all humans, to all beings in the hell realms, and the hungry ghost realms, the warrior realms. Let's wish that they chill out. And dedicate your merit to yourselves. A wholesome proclivity of mind that even if it goes off the rails, it comes back because it's just so good, so much better than whatever's out there. Take care of yourselves. Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahitika Punyang Tang Anumoditwa Chirang Rakantu Lokusasanang Chirang Rakantu Desanang Chirang Rakantu Mangparang. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. See you next time.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh, really appreciating Ayya Marajina for offering that and recording that before she left. And we'll see. I think she may be, when they get back from the trip next week, I think Ayya Marajina will be with us for a few days. And actually, we're hoping she'll be able to teach next weekend. So maybe she can answer your questions in person next weekend if you have any. But yeah, in the meantime, I'm just curious, what are your thoughts? What's your experience? For those who've had retreat time, what's your experience in moving kind of in and out of solitude? And maybe for those who haven't had retreat time, what are your thoughts? Yeah, just curious if anyone has anything to reflect on or ask about this. You can raise your digital hand. Oh, Ananea. You're muted, Ananea.
I thought I hit it. Anyway, thanks to Ayya Marajina for doing that. For myself, when I've done, I found after doing, let's see, a 10-day retreat, a 7-day and a 10-day retreat, and this was when I was still working, so this was a few years ago, but I had gotten to a really calm, good place, and I really didn't want to leave. I was not ready to go home and go back to work. But I mean, that being in a retreat for that length of time, it does help you establish your practice parameters and your, to get in that groove and have it become more a part of your being, so that when you do go home, you can maintain a practice at home. And when I went on longer retreats, I would find, and I wasn't working anymore, but I would go, and it probably took, probably the first one took about 10 days or more to really feel settled. Now, as I did them once a year, then I found that when I got there, I was so happy and so relieved to be there, I could drop into it. And so, I got to it much quicker than previously. And I personally really, really love the solitude. And on long retreats like that, your only thing is to practice, other than your yogi job for an hour a day. And, taking care of your mundane things like your laundry once a week or whatever, but pretty much that's it. You're going to practice, and you're listening to Dhamma talks and you have interviews and whatever. So, it's the ideal conditions to help the mind settle. And if you get to a point of resistance or whatever, something comes up, then you have the teachers to help you, go through it. So after one of those, it filters into daily life, that much stronger. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting for those of us who come to the monastery, before, so I was working full time before before I came here, working full time, and I would go on retreats during my vacations, or I'd visit monasteries during my vacation time. And yeah, I think it's really necessary, like Ayya Marajina says, I think it's necessary to have had that experience and just see what it's like to separate yourself from all of that usual stimulation and then watch how the mind does settle. Because if you've never had the experience of it, you don't know that it's even possible. And there's a way that, like, if you just remove all of that, and like Ananea said, you're in this like really ideal circumstance, the mind just naturally settles. You don't have to know what you're doing. You don't have to you don't need a lot of skill with it yet. Like, the mind will just naturally settle on its own if you put it in this environment without this outside stimulation. But then if that's all you do, then it's like you have this experience of your mind quieting down and settling and having this feeling of solitude and this really like kind of independence from all of those things. But you don't know how to do it on your own because it's completely dependent on being in those ideal conditions. And so there's this kind of like fragility of it as well. So then you come out of that and you go back to your usual things in your life, and it's just like all that stuff just comes back again. So the interesting thing about being in the monastery is you have a lot of people here who are, all of us are introverts, but you're putting us all together and having us live in community life. And I think probably no one gets as much solitude as they would prefer. But being in an environment that's not just, it's not going to your job and kind of being and watching TV, and it's not like having that kind of stimulation. It is being with people who are practicing full time and reflecting on the Dhamma and working in a mindful way and being in an environment that reinforces all of that. I think over time, like, you develop, it's not just the mind quieting down, it's like that, but with like sort of a robustness to it. And you actually are like understanding the skill of the way I engage with things and the way I'm using my mind and the way I'm behaving actually there's like very tangible, clear cause and effect that then, what is my internal experience? Um, and so you actually learn the skill of quieting the mind down without needing to be in these perfect conditions. Um, it's, it's less pleasant than being on retreat, but I think it's more effective in my experience in terms of actual training that then getting more kind of confidence of like, oh, like we were talking about this morning too, like, oh, I know how to do this. I'm not dependent. It's not random. It's not like, I don't have to make the outside conditions exactly what I want them to be, but I actually know what I'm doing and can have intentionality around helping my mind be more quiet and calm and have that solitude.
You know, when I was still working and it came out, I'm still working. But the thing is with that, because hopefully when you're doing the retreat, no matter what your particular focus is, whether it's metta or breath or whatever, but that you are developing mindfulness so that when you come out and you're in your day-to-day life, some things are really stark and very obvious that that's not a great thing to be doing, or where did that come from? You know what I mean? So there is the benefit of that does carry through to your day-to-day life, fortunately. And if you maintain a practice on a daily basis, then that's helping to reinforce all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. And I think there's like a progression of, my first retreat, it was like, I don't know what's happening. I just know my mind is getting quieter, you know. And then years later, you're like, you do, understand more about what you're actually doing that's causing that. Um, Learning how to do that yourself. Oh, how about others? Thoughts? I'm curious about like if there's people who have not had any retreat experience. What's your experience of practicing in daily life? I don't know, maybe all of you do have. I don't know. Daniel.
Yeah, I personally don't have any experience doing a Buddhist retreat, though for several years I lived on and off at an Eastern Orthodox monastery in Point Reyes.
Mm.
Obviously a different tradition.
Mhm.
However, certainly plenty of overlap in terms of solitude and silence was much prized and encouraged in that environment. And I certainly, I think one of the kind of strange things you learn about the Dhamma is that less is more, and how especially for someone who's a little new to it, the immediate thought of losing things or abstaining from things or not having things is intimidating, or it seems rather austere, maybe kind of life denying or something. And when you actually get to practice with it and experience it and sit with it, um, it's it's so pleasant and it's so beneficial to have less, and how and how more comes with all the strings attached to more, all the stress and the maintenance and the this and the that that you have to do. It's never just abundance or something like that. And I'm reminded of, and I may be quoting this wrong, but I think it's the funeral chant that's done from the Abhidhamma. One of the lines from it is something like, all these dhammas cease and their cessation is such bliss, or something like that.
Mhm.
And I really resonate with that in my experience, is having less, even less of oneself, is quite pleasant and not at all life denying. And so I remember I lived in that monastery on and off while going to college, and you know, it was kind of weird for a lot of people. Why would you do that? Why would you go there? And it was hard to kind of explain why. Actually, the trick is having less. You'd be surprised at how much better it is than all the extras. But anyway, that was sort of that's been my experience, at least.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I mean, obviously people have those questions about us here, or, like, oh, you're running away from everything, or like, isn't it boring, or, all of those kinds of things. And yeah, you're right. It's like when we're in that state of like all of these things and all of this overstimulation, you're not even really feeling any of it properly anyway, because you're always sort of like seeking after the next thing. And then, like you say, there's all of the maintenance and the, fixing and the, all the stuff that comes with it. And um, actually, the more you reduce those things, the more you're actually like in your life in a way that you can't be with all of that stuff. Um, and the way that's, coming back to the idea of like real solitude, of like you're actually like with yourself and experiencing yourself, and not just like having your attention out on all these other things that you're trying to find yourself through them somehow, versus actually like seeing what's actually really truly experiencing what's actually here is actually quite different, and feels more like you're being yourself. We kind of have this idea that like there's this self that we're trying to maintain, that we store out in all of these things in our lives that we're having to maintain and keep up and seek after, and it's not real anyway. And so when you take all of that away, you're actually like coming back to really experiencing what's happening right here. Yeah.
Not to maybe add to that a little bit, I had the experience the other day of I was going into meditation, and before I did, my partner says to me, someone parked blocking our driveway. It happens sometimes that they're not paying attention and they park in the street. And I was annoyed. Dang it. And so, okay, well, we'll deal with that when we do that. Went to meditate. And while meditating, I kind of thought to myself, that driveway isn't really like yours. You know what I mean? It's just an object out there. Maybe there's a legal fiction that it's yours somehow. But like if my neighbor's driveway was blocked, I probably wouldn't even notice. And if I did, I'd think, "Oh, poor guy," and just completely put it out of my head. But because it's a specific driveway, that's a big deal. And it was that sort of less is more experience of like, wouldn't it be nice just not have driveways? And then like people could park wherever and it wouldn't bother you because you have no driveway to protect or defend against the parkers. And so it was a very beneficial meditation session as it kind of went from there of like, well, how many other things aren't really yours? You don't really own that. And
Right.
anyway.
Right. Well, yeah, and there again, that's the like the benefit of the solitude, in the sense of like, by rather than just like going off into like how annoyed I am about my driveway, like actually having this kind of chance to separate yourself from it and come back, and from that place be like, oh, it's not a big deal. Unless you needed to go somewhere urgently, in which case it would probably be annoying. All right, Elaine.
Hiya. I've only been on one kind of Zen retreat for 3 days. I love solitude. I'm an extrovert, or introvert. So this lifestyle really appeals to me. And it's like, oh, I'd love to be around. I'd love to go to a retreat. Like it'd be so nice to be with like-minded people. And for a while, I think the biggest thing is wondering if I'm delusional in some things or actually doing things properly. Um, I did an online Upasika retreat or practice with Ajahn Sana, so that was really good. But yeah, it's more just wondering if I'm actually practicing properly. I'd love to go on a retreat. Haven't yet. But
Yeah.
is there? You said that you were interested in knowing about people like me? Is there anything that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, just kind of curious about how much experience people have and whether you have had retreat experience or not. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we can learn a lot by practicing on our own for sure. And I think there is something really beneficial about being physically in a group together with people who are on retreat together. Even if you're not interacting and talking and all that, but just like being together at a retreat center with people who are in silence together and with teachers who are holding that space for you, it really there's a way that it just reinforces it so much and keeps bringing it back and forces you to stay there and really work with the things in a way that if you're like in your home alone, I think is
It's easier to slip and say, well,
right.
that's
Yeah, or
good.
even if you're not slipping, even if it's just like, oh, I walk through my kitchen and I notice, oh, there's a thing I intended to fix, and it's just like there's all of these things in your environment that are reinforcing your plans and your identity and your all of that stuff, your relationships. Whereas if you're in a separate environment in a retreat center, you don't have that kind of personal connection to the surroundings in the same way, and so it gives you more of a sense of solitude.
But a detachment too from stuff, right?
Yeah, it's can be attachment to stuff. It can also just be like, so much of the way we're interacting with the outside world is we have this sense of ourselves that we're sort of maintaining, this sense of identity that we're maintaining through all of this contact. And we have things in our home that remind us of that. We have people we talk to that remind us of that. And so to actually really take a break from that and be like, okay, like what is my internal experience without all of these external things reinforcing my existing story? And so to really get a break from that and give yourself some freedom to say like, okay, like if that story isn't being reinforced, what's actually true about it and what's not? And it like kind of gives you a little bit of space and kind of the opportunity to rethink it a little bit and reconsider and say like, is there a way that I can be more free and that I can have a bit of freedom from patterns that might be causing me suffering? And just there's a way that like taking a break can give you a little more space to really have space to kind of work with that, rather than if you're kind of in this flow of constant reinforcement of your existing story that you may not get in the same way.
This is funny. I almost think I have thought sometimes about if I went on a 10-day retreat, would I actually fit in there, right? Would I be a good practitioner? Would I be able to make it? The high bed, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe 2026 will be the year of metta and retreats.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah. Well, yeah, part of the beauty of secluded retreat, and even if you're in a retreat center, it's like you don't have to fit in. You don't have to talk to anyone. Right? You get to have a break from thinking about those things.
Thank you, Ayya.
Chintana.
So I've been to a lot of retreats when I was younger, but they were the kind of retreats where they fed you and there was a gift shop. That being said, I was wondering if, being at Aranyavoti, if that's considered a retreat.
I think it's a kind of retreat, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's, even for us, we have, like during our winter retreat, which is coming up, each of us will have time of secluded retreat where we might have 2 or 3 weeks where we really are just maybe going to Aranyavoti and spending time in our kuti, in our like little tiny one-person cabin, and we have no duties, we have no job, we don't talk to anyone, we don't look at our computer. And so we may have like really secluded retreat time, that's much more secluded than we usually are. But for sure, if you're used to living out in the world and going to your job, a corporate job or something, and having a lot of interaction out in the world, by comparison, coming to the monastery will feel
Yeah.
like a retreat because you're surrounded by people who are living mindfully and speaking about the Dhamma and not talking about sports teams or whatever. I think these are all like, kind of different gradations, and
Right. That makes
what may be
sense.
appropriate for different people at different times maybe is certainly not going to be the same.
Okay. Just curious. Thank you.
I guess what was your experience of being at Aranya Bodhi? Did it feel like a retreat?
It was a lot of work actually, being in
Mhm.
the kitchen until I got thrown out by Jack. And then we had to work through that. But and I don't know, it seems like I was always busy. And I don't understand why exactly, but I guess I was excited to be there and there were other like-minded people there. Then we were studying or that or hiking, So it was work too. So it was a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can look at our own tendencies towards, and I mean, me too, our own tendencies towards making ourselves busy, even we don't need to.
Yeah.
It's also very much a thing that all of us do.
I loved driving. That was the best job of all.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
you.
real fun. I noticed though that I had to drive differently with different bhikkhunis in the car.
Right.
Some bhikkhunis I had to kind of pretend I had a cup of coffee on the dashboard that I didn't want to spill because I could see them grasping. So I was like, chill out.
Right, exactly. It's good for like, even in the midst of activity, developing our kind of mindfulness and our calmness, even while we are doing things.
Those roads are fun.
Especially noticeable with driving.
Yeah. So that was cool. All right.
Yeah. Thank you, Shintana.
Thanks.
Right. Any thoughts from anyone else? All of this is making me look forward to our own upcoming retreat time. Oh yeah, Richard.
I saw earlier that Nancy had her hand up, but I'm not sure why she put it down.
Okay. Nancy, if you're interested to say anything, welcome, but not needed.
Did you want to share, Richard? I'll share, I guess. I've only been on 2 3-day retreats over several years, and I'm still working full-time, and I got into Dharma study. I think my first teacher was Ajahn Sona at Burkham Monastery in British Columbia. I gravitated to him because I'm a Seattle native. And then, over the past 6 years, I've just become a YouTube follower of numerous English-speaking Ajahns and the Bhikkhunis at Dhammarini and Sravasti in Washington State, Clear Mountain in Seattle, the young guys there. And I could blather off a lot, but it's helped me. I've gravitated much more heavily into Dharma study because of my childhood abuse issues and addiction early in life to alcohol. And so I had been in 12-step groups since my early 20s. But still struggled even now in my 60s. And I try to meditate every day, and Sunday is what I tell people it's my Dharma day. And I have wireless headphones, and I'll listen to 5 hours of Dharma talk from Ajahn Sumedho, and I've pretty much heard 300 videos of Ajahn Sona. So I've had to move on to some other ashrams. And I'll clean my house and listen to Dharma talks, and it brings me so much peace. I'm so grateful that Theravada Buddhism is giving. I don't have to pay like at an insight. I can give dana when I can afford it. I'm grateful for your teachings, and it's helped me a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I think all of us are here in monastic life because it's helped us too, and so we're really glad that we can share that when we're able to. All right. Any final thoughts from anyone? All right, let's close by paying respects to the Triple Gem. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Right.
I wanted to
Thank
say
you,
driving to Fremont was the best. That was awesome. I'll always
I'm
remember that.
very glad you enjoyed your Dhammadrini driving experience. Not everyone does, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Ayya.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. We'll have a good holiday week. Happy solstice, and for those in California, stay dry in the upcoming storms.
Sadhu,
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 sadhu.
sadhu.